Okay, so tonight we're going to do a little bit with our graphing calculator. I'm going to show you how to do a couple of functions with that and how to identify the graphs from the equations. Okay, so if we look over here, let's start with our first graph. Okay, this is a function because it has this part right here, and we pronounce that as f of x. F stands for function. So this is a function of f, or x, excuse me. Okay, but f of x is equal to the y. So I could have written this as y equals 8x plus 15, or we can say f of x is 8x plus 15. So either is correct. Hopefully, before we even graph this, you recognize that this is in this form, which should graph as a line. Okay, so just looking at this, I should know it makes a line for me. So we're going to pull up your calculator. I was doing stuff with mine here. All right, and so I want to put this equation in. So we go to the y equals here. I got to clear out my stuff I had from earlier. Here we go. Okay, and you can put in one line or several different graphs at one time. Right now we're going to focus on one. Okay, so we're going to put in 8x. So I have 8. Your x button is right next to the alpha button. Okay, and x is the only variable that your calculator will understand. You can see down here in green, you have other letters that you can use. So if you want to put in if the letter's in green, you have to hit the alpha green button, and you can put in that letter. That's an O. But your calculator won't understand, it won't recognize it as a variable. The only variable it recognizes is x, so we always have to use x. Then we put plus, and then we put 15. Okay, and then we're going to hit graph. Okay, so that's our equation. If you go to a window, whenever you reset your calculator or change it to Zoom Standard, you always start with a -10, 10 window. So that means the x-axis will go between -10 and +10. This stands for x scale, which means it's going to go up by 1 each time, one number. If I wanted my scale to go up by 2s, like I wanted to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, I would put 2 in here. And then this is the y-axis, the vertical axis, and it goes from -10 to 10 with a scale of 1 also. So let's go back to our graph. If you hit the trace button, when you first hit graph, it always tells you where the y-intercept is. And you can see I can't see it up here because my y-axis only goes to 10, and this goes to 15. So if I really want to see that y-intercept, I can go back to my window, and I can go down to my y-max, and I want it to show me 15, so I might want to go a little over 15 to make sure I get it in there. And then I'll hit graph again, and now I can see the y-intercept and a little bit more of the graph. Okay, you can also do zoom out. If you hit zoom and go 3, you have to hit enter after that, and it'll zoom out. And you can keep hitting enter over and over again, and it'll keep zooming out more and more. Also recognize these little lines up here. That's like your little computer thinking. Okay, now if I want to go back to my regular screen, I can go to Zoom Standard, and that takes me back to the 10 by 10 square. So a couple of notes. Okay, Zoom Standard is something we're going to use a lot, and that was number 6, and that takes you to a 10 by 10 screen. So you always want to start in this general screen, and then you can zoom it in or out. If you're going to do zoom out, you have to hit enter and enter again. A lot of people get confused with that. You hit zoom out, enter, so it says it's that function, and then when you actually want it to zoom, you have to hit enter again. Okay, so we always want to start in this 10 by 10 screen of Zoom Standard, and you always want to, when you zoom out, you have to enter twice, and then you can keep hitting enter, and it'll keep zooming out more and more and more. Okay, all right, let's look at another example here. All right, so now I'm looking at this example here. Remember, we can change that to y equals, and I notice I have an x squared here, so that should tell you that this makes a quadratic formula, right? So you're going to go to your calculator. We'll go back to my y equals. We can clear that. And then we need a negative. So I don't know if I can get this on my screen or not. The negative is just below this 3 button here. So we hit negative. Now fractions, a lot of people ask me, there's no fraction button on here. It's because fractions are divisions. So use the division sign for the fraction. So we do 1 divided by, oops, did that wrong, sorry. 1 divided by 2, okay? So that's another good little note to have here, that the divide sign is your fraction sign. Okay, that's key, all right? So I have my 1/2, now I have my x, and I want to square it. If you look on this left side, there's a little x squared here. So I can just hit that button, and that gives me the x squared. And then I have plus, and then 2, and then your x is right next to alpha. And then I want to go ahead, and I'm going to go to my zoom and hit standard. So it starts in that 10 by 10 screen first. It sort of centers it up. And you can see this is pretty good. I can see the graph just fine from here. Okay? So that's quadratics, and that's how you put in x squared, right? So let's go on to another example. This one is the absolute value sign, right? And this one's a little bit harder. We're going to put this one in again. So again, we want to clear that, all right? And then we want to go to, here we go. I want to make it so you could see a little bit bigger. So this is the absolute value. So to do the absolute value, we have to use this button called catalog. And it's in blue, so I have to hit second, catalog. And the first one is ABS, and that stands for absolute value, okay? So here I have negative absolute value of x. So I'm going to put my negative in here, which is below the 3. I'm going to go to second catalog and hit enter for absolute. I'm going to put in my variable x and end the parentheses, okay? Again, I want to make sure I start at zoom standard, and it makes the absolute value for me, okay? So again, over here, a quick note for the absolute value signs. We have to hit the second button, the catalog button, and then the ABS stands for absolute value. So it'll look like this. A, B, S, and then X, and then we had a negative here, right? So that's how you do absolute value. Let's see. And then I had one other one. I thought we already did a quadratic though. Didn't we do quadratic? Yeah, so we'll skip that one. Okay, and then again, you should have recognized that this was absolute value, and you should have known it was going to give you a V. But notice you had a negative, so it gave you an upside down V. Okay, so I want you to do a little bit, oh no, we forgot exponential. One more, sorry. This is a little bit longer tonight. All right, so now we're going to do an exponential graph, okay? So we're going to go back to my y equals again, clear this out. I'm going to put in 2, and this is an exponent of x. This right here, this little up arrow, is your exponential button. So we raise it to the x power, okay? And then again, we want to start in zoom standard, and when I graph that, I get the exponential equation. So again, you might want to make yourself a little note that this is your exponent button. Okay. All right. So last thing I'm going to do a little, have you go through and see if you can pick the right graph based on the equation. You might want to use your notes to help you with that. So for this one, here's your equation. Which graph should that make? Here we have this equation. Which graph should go with that equation? Look at this equation. Which one should go with this one? Might be it. Oh, one more. And then we have this equation. Pick the correct graph that equation should draw. There we go. A little longer tonight, sorry, but we had to get that in. Good night.